10th chapter of Krishna departing from Hastinapur. Om Namo Bhagavate Vasudevaya. Om Namo Bhagavate Vasudevaya. Om Namo Bhagavate Vasudevaya. Narayanam Namaskrityam Naram Chaiva Narottamam Devim Saraswatim Vyasam Tato Jaya Udirayet Nashtaprayeshu Bhadreshu Nityam Bhagavata Sevaya Bhagavate Uttam Shloke Bhaktir Bhavatir Naishtiki Om Ajnantimirandasya Jnananjana Shalakaya Chakshurunmilitam Yena Tasmai Shri Gurave Namaha. Namo Om Vishwadaya Krishna. So last time we had ended with the 9th chapter, which is the instructions and prayers by Bhishma Dev. And if you recollect, the chapter started with Krishna wanting to leave Hastinapur for Dwarka. And he is first stopped by, so we'll see that Krishna's journey from Hastinapur to Dwarka is not an easy journey. So the first time when he tries to leave, he is stopped by Uttara. And this is the time when she comes to him running because of the Brahmastra that is thrown to her by Ashwathama. So then Krishna takes care of that, and then he's getting ready to leave, and now he is approached by Kunti Devi. And then we see the wonderful prayers by Kunti Devi. Then he begins to leave again, and then he is stopped this time by Mirage Yudhishthir because he is bewildered and he does not want to rule, which is the 9th chapter. And at that time, Krishna, he takes Mirage Yudhishthir to Bhishma Dev, who's lying on a bed of arrows. And the chapter is divided into instructions by Bhishma to Yudhishthir, which is a very small part of the chapter. I think there are just 4 verses. And the remaining part of the chapter is the prayers by Bhishma Dev. So the chapter ends with Bhishma Dev finally absorbed in the thoughts of Krishna. He gives up his body, and then everybody departs back, including Maharaj Yudhishthir, who now is convinced by the instructions of Bhishma Dev, Krishna, to assume the role of the emperor of the world. So the 10th chapter is titled as the departure of Lord Krishna for Dwarka. And this is where Krishna finally, on his 4th attempt, is able to depart from Hastinapur to Dwarka. So this chapter talks about the mood of separation. So when Krishna is leaving Hastinapur, then the citizens of Hastinapur, and specifically the women of Hastinapur, are feeling intense separation from him. The next chapter, which is the arrival of Krishna to Dwarka, talks about the mood of anticipation of the devotees, that they are anticipating their imminent association with Krishna. And then we'll see that both of them are equally ecstatic. The mood of imminent separation and the mood of imminent association. So the 10th chapter essentially is divided into 2 parts. The first part, which is 6 verses, is establishing the continuity with the previous chapter. The previous chapter ended with Mirage Yudhishthir assuming the throne. And the first 6 verses is description of the rule of Mirage Yudhishthir. And then after that we see the talks and the prayers by the ladies of Hastinapur. So we'll start with the first verse, 10th chapter, first canto. Shaunaka vacha atva swariktas pradatatayane Yudhishthiro dharma pratama varishtaha sanuja pratyavaruddha bhojanaha katham pravrataha kimakarshitataha. Saunak Muni said, after killing his enemies who decided to usurp his rightful inheritance, how did the greatest of all religious men, Mirage Yudhishthir, assisted by his brothers, rule his subjects? Surely he could not freely enjoy his kingdom with unrestricted consciousness. So in the previous chapter, or in the concluding verse of the previous chapter, it was said in a general way that Yudhishthir had begun his dharmena, his rule according to the principles of dharma, as per Vasudeva Anumodita, as per the desire, the will, and the permission of Krishna. So this is what the 9th chapter had ended with. So the sages now want to know more specifics about it. That how did he rule? Did he continue to have any challenges with his conscience? If he did, how did he deal with them? So in a lecture on this verse, Prabhupada says, therefore in our Shastra, when you commit some necessary sinful activities, to counteract it, a fasting is recommended. Therefore, Yudhishthira Maharaj was observing fasting, taking little necessities. Therefore, Shaunak Muni is inquiring. Sanuja pratyavarud bhojana katham pravrata kim akarshit tatha. Then he was undergoing some prayashchit system. Then how did he take the reign of ruling over the kingdom? So this verse is asking more about the externals rather than the internals of Maharaj Yudhishthir. Since the sages, they themselves are declaring dharma vratam varishtha. So they are describing Yudhishthir in this verse as dharma vratam varishtha. They're the best of the righteous person. So they know that Yudhishthir is properly situated in the principles of religion. But what they're asking is that what was the external impact of such a person assuming the rule of a kingdom? And so the Goswami will describe both the internals and the externals. So in the purport, Prabhupada says, he fought, therefore, for the right cause under the guidance of Lord Krishna, but he could not enjoy the results of his victory because his cousins were all killed in the fight. He therefore ruled over the kingdom as a matter of duty, assisted by his younger brothers. Okay, so we'll do the next verse, 110-2. Sutta vacha vamasham kururvam shadvagne niratam samrahayitva bhavabhavena harihi niveshayitva nijarajyaishvaro yudhishtaram pritamana babuvaha. So the Goswami said, Lord Krishna, the Supreme Personality of Godhead, who is the maintainer of the world, became pleased after re-establishing Maharaj Yudhishthir in his own kingdom, and after restoring the Kuru dynasty, which had been exhausted by the bamboo fire of anger. So, in this verse, three actions are described: the destruction of the Kuru dynasty, Vamsham Kuru Niratam, the re-establishment of Maharaj Yudhishthira as the emperor of the world, Nivashayitva Nijarajya, and restoring of the Kuru dynasty, which Vishwanath Chakravarti Thakur interprets as the protection of Maharaj Parikshit, as Samrohatya. Samrohayitva, which he translates as the seedling of the dynasty. Because the dynasty was under imminent destruction, Parikshit being the only heir, so the dynasty was protected when Krishna protected Maharaj Parikshit in the womb of his mother. So Sutta ascribes Krishna to be the cause of the later two actions, which is the restoring Maharaj Yudhishthir and protecting Parikshit. But he considers the destruction of the Kuru dynasty due to their own activities. So he uses the analogy of Vamsa Davagani, or a forest fire set by bamboos. So Srila Prabhupada, in a lecture, he says that a family is often considered to be like bamboo, because bamboos tend to grow close to one another. Just like families, they tend to congregate together. And the second quality is that the bamboos often rub each other, creating heat because of friction. And Prabhupada said that is the nature of families, that they stay together and they also fight, creating anger and animosity. So factually, what Sutta is saying is that there was no external agent in this Mahabharata war. It was it was just like the bamboos that rub against one another because of the wind, and they create heat, and because of the heat, the Dvagni, the fire, is created. So similarly, in this dynasty, because of internal disagreements, this battle was fought. Krishna had nothing to do with it. So this appears in contradiction to the general understanding that Krishna, as per his promise to the demigods, as per his promise to Bhumi Devi, had said that I will come and I will lighten your load, and the Mahabharata was fought. So the difference is explained as the difference between Krishna's desire and Krishna's will. So the miscreants, they are destroyed by the will of Krishna. So the will of Krishna is manifested as the law of karma. And because of the law of karma, these annihilations happen. So they are by the will of Krishna, but Krishna is completely neutral to them. But the protection of the devotees is by the desire of Krishna. So Sutta in this verse, he uses the term Pritamana to indicate that the other two activities, which is the protection of Parikshit Maharaj, the restoration of Maharaj Yudhishthir, was pleasing to the Pritamana, pleasing to the mind of Krishna. So when Krishna deals with his devotees, then the activities are as per his desire. And when he is dealing with everybody else, the activities are as per his will. Prabhupada, in a lecture, he says, Ishvara Prita Mano Bhuvva. This is a lecture on this particular verse. Prabhupada says, Ishwar becomes pleased. Ishwar is always pleased. He is never displeased. But when he sees that people are devotees, People are acting as part and parcel of him. He is more pleased. When he saw, now Maharaj Yudhishthira is situated on the throne for the control of the world, Pritmana Babuvaha, he became satisfied. There is my real representative and he will work nicely. So in this verse, Sutta refers to Krishna as Hari. So Hari also is a name of Krishna, which means that one who takes away. And generally in the context of one who takes away the miseries of his devotees. So in this context, that particular name is apt because Krishna acted to take away the misery of his devotees, whether it's in form of the Pandavas or the Devas or Bhumi Devi or the Braja. And he's also called Bhava Bhavana. So Bhava Bhavana, Prabhupada translates as the maintainer of creation, to in the context that these activities were done by Krishna in order to preserve the integrity of the kingdom. And Vishwanath Chakravarti Thakur translates Bhav Bhavana as so Bhav, another name of Lord Shiva is Bhav. So Vishwanath Chakravarti translates this as Krishna makes Lord Shiva meditate on his pastimes. Bhavana is his pastimes. Bhav Bhavana is Shiva meditating on the pastimes of Lord Krishna. So alluding to the wonderful pastimes that Krishna performs when he descends. Okay, we'll do the next verse, the 110.3. Nishamya bhishmakatam matha achutakam pravarta vijnana viduta vibramaha shashashagamindrivajita ashrayaha paridyupanatam manujanuvartitaha. Maharaj Yudhishthira, after being enlightened by what was spoken by Bhishma Dev and Lord Shri Krishna, the infallible, engaged himself in matters of perfect knowledge, because all his misgivings were eradicated. Thus, he ruled over the earth and the seas and was followed by his younger brothers. So this is a direct answer to the question that was asked by the sages in 110.1, that how did Maharaj Yudhishthira rule? And it also describes the situation of a perfect ruler. It also describes the progressive path of a devotee. So Sudha Goswami, he talks about three aspects of the conception under which Maharaj Yudhishthira progressed to rule. So first was Bhishma Uktam Atha Achyuta Uktam. So Bhishma Uktam means the instructions by Bhishma Dev, Atha Achyuta Uktam, instructions by Krishna. So the first thing he did was he received the instructions from those who knew. Bhishma Dev was a Mahajan, Krishna is the Supreme Personality of Godhead, and with great attention, Maharaj Yudhishthira, he received this instructions. And Bhishma Uktam is again a presentation of Achyuta Uktam. So Bhishma did not say anything on his own, but what he presented was what was already there in the Vedas, which was Achyuta Uktam, which is spoken by Krishna. So Yudhishthira Maharaj, first he heard from the scriptures as presented by the sadhus. Then Pravrata Vijnana. So this is the process of realizing the knowledge that he acquired. So the first was Yudhishthira Maharaj acquired Gyan. The second is that based on his practices, the Gyan became Vigyan, which is realizations. So Maharaj Yudhishthira did not become like a mental speculator, but the knowledge that he acquired, he looked to apply. And based on that, he developed a practical insight into the knowledge. So, Pravrata Vigyan. And specifically in this context, the Vigyan that he understood was that everything in this world is dependent on Krishna. Third is Viduta Vibhramaha. So Gyan and Vigyan acting together, it removed all doubts or misgivings from the mind of Maharaj Yudhishthira, specifically that I am the doer. So based on this knowledge, based on this realization, Maharaj Yudhishthira began to act on the platform of bhakti. That I am not the doer, but I am an instrument and Krishna is the doer. So Sudha Goswami explains this progression for Maharaj Yudhishthira and also for us, because this is the recommended path for making steady advancements. What was the result of this? So in the later part of the verse, he compares the rule of Maharaj Yudhishthira to Indraiva Ajita Ashraya. He says that the rule of Maharaj Yudhishthira is comparable to Indraiva, who actually has a much superior position because he is the king of the Devas. But because Maharaj Yudhishthira was advancing in this way of Gyan, Vigyan and Bhakti, his rule was comparable of that of Indra. So Indra eva ajita ashraya, and Sutta Goswami mentions that even Indra ajita ashraya, that is comparable to Indra, the great king of the Devas, who also takes shelter of Krishna. Another name of Krishna is Ajita. So who also takes shelter of Krishna. Then Anuja Vartita, which means that with the support or the compliance of the younger brothers. So Maharaj Yudhishthira ruled with the support of Arjun and Bhim and Nakul and Sahadev. And this Anuja Vartita is also applied to Indra, that Indra ruled with the support of his younger brother, which is Vamandev. So in these set of verses, Prabhupada has spoken very, very strongly. So these are preaching purports. He has spoken very, very strongly about the process of perfect rule. And he makes the same point in different ways for emphasis. And I'll read small snippets of the purport. These are good preaching points, but something that you have to be careful about the audience that you're preaching to. So in the purport of this verse, Prabhupada says, the conception of one world state can only be fulfilled if you follow the infallible authority. An imperfect human being cannot create an ideology acceptable to everyone. Only the perfect and the infallible can create a program which is applicable at every place and can be followed by all in the world. It is the person who rules and not the impersonal government. If the person is perfect, the government is perfect. If the person is a fool, the government is a fool's paradise. That is the law of nature. There are so many stories of imperfect kings or executive heads. Therefore, the executive head must be a trained person like Maharaj Yudhishthira. and he must have full autocratic power to rule the world. The conception of a world state can take shape only under the regime of a perfect king like Maharaj Yudhishthir. The world was happy in those days because there were kings like Maharaj Yudhishthir to rule the world. So this is a concept that is a little difficult to preach, because essentially Prabhupada is condemning democracy. And as we know, democracy is something that is within quotes, properly functioning democracy is something that is highly desirable. So they say that with the exception of the oil-rich kingdoms, all the other countries in this world that are first world countries have functioning democracies. So Prabhupada, of course, and that is more in terms of their economic opulence. Prabhupada, of course, is preaching something completely opposite. He's saying democracies are useless because if the people who are voting are fools, they'll vote for a fool and the government will be a fool's paradise. So the proper way is to be ruled by an enlightened emperor. He said the autocratic rule of an enlightened monarchy. So one of the points Prabhupada makes here is an imperfect human being cannot create an ideology acceptable to everyone. And Dhanodhar Swami, he expands on this statement, and he says that there are 4 kinds of ideologies that are created by these imperfected humans. So the ideologies created by the Shudras result in communism. The ideology created by the Vaishyas results in capitalism. The ideology created by the Kshatriyas results in monarchy. And the ideology created by the Brahmanas results in anarchism. But when one follows the ideology created by the Vedas, which is Varnashram Dharma, then all the 4 ideologies are automatically incorporated. Okay, so we'll do the next verse. Kamam varshara prajanya sarvakam dugamai shishichu sma vrajan gavaha priyashodashvatir muda. During the reign of Maharaj Yudhishthir, the clouds showered all the water that people needed, and the earth produced all the necessities of man in profusion. Due to its fatty milk bag and cheerful attitude, the cows used to moisten the grazing ground with milk. So previously, Sutta Goswami was speaking in a more general way. Now he is giving tangible examples to substantiate the point that the rule of Maharaj Yudhishthir was glorious, and he talks about 3 things that are important to the prosperity of a kingdom: rains, grains, and milk. And he says all 3 of them were in abundance. So Prabhupada mentions that these things don't happen by chance. The only reason that they happen is if there is the mercy of Krishna. And the only way the mercy of Krishna comes is if the ruler is properly situated. So Krishna, Srila Prabhupada gives the example of rain. And then he in the 3rd chapter of the Bhagavad Gita, Krishna says all living bodies subsist on food grains which are produced from rains. Rains are produced by the performance of yajna, and yajna is born of prescribed duties. So when the praja is guided by a properly situated king to do the prescribed duties, then the rains come. Because of the rains, the grains come, and because of the grains, the cows are also well fed and produce abundance of milk. So in the purport, Prabhupada again speaks very strongly. So he says that not only do regulated rains help ample production of grains and fruits, but when they combine with astronomical influences, there is ample production of valuable stones and pearls. Grains and vegetables can sumptuously feed a man and animal, and a fatty cow delivers enough milk to supply a man sumptuously with vigor and vitality. If there is enough milk, enough grains, enough fruit, enough cotton, enough silk, and enough jewels, then why do the people need cinema, houses of prostitution, slaughterhouses, etc.? What is the need of an artificial, luxurious life of cinema, cars, radio, flesh, and hotels? Has the civilization produced anything but quarreling individually and nationally? Has the civilization enhanced the cause of equality and fraternity by sending thousands of men into a hellish planet and the warfields at the whims of a particular man? Therefore, in contrast with the modern advanced civilized form of government, an autocracy like Mirage is by far superior to a so-called democracy in which animals are killed and a man less than animal is allowed to cast votes for another less than animal man. Human civilization should depend on the production of material nature without artificially attempting economic development to turn the world into a chaos of artificial greed and power only for the purpose of artificial luxuries and sense gratification. This is but the life of dogs and hogs. So in these 6 verses, as I had indicated earlier, Srila Prabhupada uses these as strong preaching verses. That while glorifying the rule of Maharaj Yudhishthir, he condemns the current rule, and he condemns the current conduct. And he says, what is the need for cinemas and hotels and slaughterhouses and artificial forms of entertainment when everything is naturally present? The ugra karma, the people work excessively hard for little material gains, which are available on their own if the ruler is enlightened. Okay, next verse 110.5. Nadya samudra girya svanaspati virudaha falante ashadhyah sarvaha kamam manavratu tasya vai. The rivers, oceans, hills, mountains, forests, creepers, and active drugs in every season paid their tax quota to the king in profusion. So Prabhupada's purport is again very strong in preaching. He makes the point that real advancement is only possible by the mercy of Krishna. So he says the secret to success is to take refuge under the protection of the Supreme Lord. And he writes to take refuge under the protection of the Supreme Lord in italics for emphasis. Second point he makes is the people should be led by a bona fide representative of the Lord. And the third point he made is that anything else will eventually produce disastrous results. So Prabhupada, this is a verse that Prabhupada quotes in his lectures. And then I just picked a few references. In a lecture, Prabhupada says, so everything in nature has to give something. That is the order. Everything that we see, Nadia, the river, why has God created the river? It has got a function. Similarly, Samudra, the ocean. Similarly, the hills, mountains, giryas, vanaspati, vegetables. All these vegetables which are growing, each and every vegetable creeper has some service. We do not know. The Prabhupada is making the point that naturally, Krishna has arranged for our sustenance. Naturally, Krishna has arranged for our pious enjoyment. We don't have to artificially strive for it. And then Prabhupada, he talks about the artificial way of controlling nature. So in another lecture, he says, how nature can be controlled. Ma mevaya prapadyante mayam etan tarantite. 7:14 Bhagavad Gita. This is the law of nature. If you become disobedient to God, then Prakriti or nature will give you trouble in so many ways. And as soon as you become submissive, surrender to Krishna, the Supreme Personality of Godhead, there will be no more natural disturbances. So here you have to understand that the rivers, the oceans, the mountains, and the trees and the creepers, they may all serve you regularly, provided you are obedient to Krishna. So Prabhupada in the lecture, he establishes this connection that we are trying to control nature, but by nature, we are controlled by nature. And that is because we are conditioned. So we are under the control of Maya. So because we are doing something that is not naturally there, we have to try so hard for it. But nature is under the control of Krishna. Maya meva tarantite. So if you surrender to Krishna, then through that we automatically gain control of nature without separately striving for it. So Prabhupada again makes the same point that through the process of bhakti, can a kingdom flourish? Otherwise, it will have a lot of effort and very little outcome. Next verse, and after that I will stop and see any question. This is the last verse of Sutta Goswami describing the rule of Maharaj Yudhishthira. Natya vyadaya klesha deva bhutatma hetavaha ajata shatrava bhavan jantunam rajani karichit. Because of the king having no enemy, the living beings were not at any time disturbed by mental agonies, diseases, or excessive heat or cold. So in the previous verse, Sutta Goswami, he had described that because of the rule of Maharaj Yudhishthira, the nature or Prakriti was completely cooperative. Here he extends that to say that not only was the king living in harmony, but even the praja or the people of the land were living in complete harmony and peace. So he calls Yudhishthira as Ajatashatru, as one who has no one who has no enemies, and he calls this to get our attention to the fact that Maharaj Yudhishthira is a devotee of Krishna, because otherwise the nature of the material world is that there would always be enmity. You try to please somebody, somebody else becomes envious of you. But because Krishna is dear to everyone, his devotee is Sarvapriya. His devotee is also dear to everyone. And because Yudhishthira is Ajatashatru, or because Yudhishthira is a devotee of Krishna, he is Ajatashatru. So Sutta Goswami is bringing attention to the fact that what happens when the ruler is a devotee of Krishna. So he says that the praja was free from Deva Bhutatma. So this, if you will remember from the discussions in the Nectar of Devotion, are the three kinds of kleshas. So Deva is created by the Devas. This is the Adi Daivik. And the kleshas described in this verse is excessive heat or cold. So these are the trials and tribulations by the Devas, natural disturbances. Then the second klesha is Atma, by the self or the body. This is the Adhyatmic klesha, which he calls as adhaya or mental agonies. So this is the This is the suffering that we inflict on ourselves because our mind is not cooperating. And the third is bhuta, which is adhibhautik, that is caused by other living entities. And here he describes it as vyadhiya, or diseases. So these are other living entities that enter our body and cause disturbance. So in the Nectar of Devotion, it is described that only through the process of bhakti does kleshangani happen. Does these three kleshas disappear? So essentially what Sutta Goswami is saying is that, and he's describing the symptom and is letting us infer the cause, that the praja, or the people in the land of, in the kingdom of Maharaj Yudhishthira, were free of these three kleshas because under the guidance of Maharaj Yudhishthira, they were practicing bhakti. And because of this bhakti, they were experiencing freedom from these kinds of klesha. Okay, so this ends the first part of the chapter, which is description of the glories of the ruler Maharaj Yudhishthira. And to summarize again, Sutta Goswami glorifies the rule of Maharaj Yudhishthira because Maharaj Yudhishthira is a devotee. He followed the process of listening submissively, realizing what he had listened and acting upon it. And because of that, there was both material prosperity, there was abundance of rains, grains, and milk, and there was spiritual advancement, which was witnessed through the fact that there were no kleshas. So I'll stop here and see if there's any questions or comments.
Hare Krishna Prabhuji, I have a question on verse 3, where Yudhishthira Maharaj, where Sutta Goswami is saying that Yudhishthira Maharaj, like after Gyan, after listening to the Gyan, then he got Vigyan, and then he started with that realized knowledge, he started ruling the kingdom. So is it does it change, like for a ruler, like does it change that they whether they are realized, like if they are realized, it is more effective versus if they are like just like doing Vaidhi Bhakti and following the regulative principles, but they're not realized, like I mean they're basically ruling, but they're just like ruling out of the Gyan and not Vigyan.
So it does make a difference because we can understand that knowledge can take us only so far, and it's not that Vaidhi Bhakti is one that is devoid of Vigyan. So even when we are practicing sadhana Vaidhi Bhakti, it is also full of realizations. The level of realizations may be not as elevated as in subsequent stages of bhakti. So I was just commenting on that part of your question, but yes, in order for us to act properly at all times, we should not only have the knowledge, but we should also have realized the knowledge. That's the only way in which knowledge can be translated into actions. So this is described quite elaborately in the 4th chapter of Bhagavad Gita, where Krishna talks about Gyan and Vigyan, leading into the 5th chapter. On a relative scale, yes, if a person is simply being directed to act based on his understandings, that is good. But the practical aspect is that knowledge itself cannot address all the varieties of situations that come up, and we can see that in our own lives, right? So we have some spiritual knowledge, but there are so many situations in our lives that come up where the knowledge is insufficient to to guide us, which is where we then take shelter of one who has realized the knowledge. Maybe a Guru Maharaj, maybe more advanced devotees. So, so that is why Sutta Goswami, he is also bringing our attention to the second aspect of Maharaj Yudhishthira's progress, that not only did he hear, he realized it, and not only did he realize it, he acted upon it.
Thank you, Prabhu. And also, like, I was just trying to understand this whole episode in terms of like bringing it down to family level. So, like, this like Maharaj Yudhishthir was ruling his kingdom, like, like that. So basically, bringing it down to like very nuclear, like, molecular level, like family level, where there is just so basically there's a head, and then there's family. So in that situation, so like we know that I mean, we saw that because Yudhishthir Maharaj was ruling, there was a lot of prosperity and things like that. I'm just trying to understand, um, I mean, devotional service is very individual, right? Like it's very like how can um, like like one person or like a ruler doing something affect another person's material prosperity, like even if they're following or not, like.
Thank you. So that's a good question. So yes, the point that you made earlier on, that's a point that Prabhupada often makes in a different context, that if you're a father or if you're a parent, then for the welfare of your family, it is important for you to practice Krishna consciousness. So you may try to materially provide for them, you may try to intellectually provide for them, but the real welfare is when you take to the process of bhakti. And then how it happens is basically, I guess, a two-part understanding. The one part which is easier to understand is Krishna's mercy. That because a person who's practicing bhakti attracts the mercy of Krishna, through that person the mercy extends to those who are dear to the devotees. The same point is made by Vishnu Chakravarti Thakur in Madhuri Kadamni, that Krishna may be neutral to everyone, but those who are dear to his devotees, transitively they become dear to Krishna also. And the second part is, which I guess these sets of verses help us understand, is that when a person is following the process of bhakti, then they're also following the do's and the don'ts that are given in the scriptures, which are the words of Krishna. And the specific example given over here is trying to control Maya, or trying to control Prakriti, nature. That nature is the cause of a lot of our kleshas. And we may try and control it on our own, but more often than not, we lose. But because Prakriti is under the control of Krishna, and if you surrender to Krishna, then Prakriti becomes favorable to us. And then from a more practical way, if a ruler or the head of the family is properly situated in spirituality, then at least they'll be living in the mode of goodness, which means they'll be setting good examples. They won't be stealing, no intoxication. There won't be sinful activities being done. So all those activities that lead to the lower modes, which lead to misery and suffering, are kind of eliminated. So so the family, the extended family, they benefit by basically coming up or being nourished in such a sattvic environment.
Hare Krishna, this is Paramatma. Just one question. You quoted Dhanurdhar Swami speaking about different ideology. You spoke about ideology created by the Sudra is called communism, by the Vaishyas is called capitalism, by the Kshatriyas is called monarchy, and by the Brahmanas anarchy, and then you went on to explain that varnashram, as is discussed in the Vedas, incorporates all four. Can you explain that a little, how it incorporates all four? I mean, as is, you said, varnashram is discussed in the Vedas. How, you know?
Sure, sure. So to be honest with you, I didn't think too much about it. This is based on a lecture from Dhanudhar Maharaj. My understanding is, and then I'm open to other devotees sharing their understanding, that in Varnashram Dharma, every Varna, the Brahman, Vaishya, Kshatriya, Shudra, they act according to their propensities. So, so there is capitalism, there is communism for the Shudras, there is the monarchy of the Kshatriyas. The anarchy of the Brahmins, the way I understood it is, it's basically intellectual freedom. So Brahmanas are intellectuals who by nature are, who are by nature question, or who are intellectually exploring boundaries, who are looking at answers, or who are asking questions that have not been asked. So in the Varnashram Dharma, all these are incorporated by giving them their appropriate position, but all of them are kind of synchronized in accordance to the overriding dharma, which is service to Krishna. That was my kind of superficial, I'll have to admit it, superficial understanding. I didn't spend too much time thinking about it. But if you or anybody else has any other thoughts on it, I'd be more than happy to hear it.
I think you give the essence of the answer. I think that explains it.
Okay, thank you, Prabhu.
Hare Krishna, Prabhu. No, it's a very quick thing. I need the very first verse we spoke about the unavoidable mistakes according to Shastra. Some fasting is recommended, right? And so we went on talking about, like, if it will be more external rather than internal, which Yudhishthira Maharaj followed. Was it like, how do we relate it? That's the question. Like, do we have to follow Shastra and follow the fasting, or we need to be as a righteous person where we need to properly situated, keeping more under the guidance of Krishna?
Yeah. Thank you, Prabhu. It's a good question. So I think there are two realizations in this. So one is that through the process of existence, sins are committed. In case of Maharaj Yudhishthira, they were, they were large sins, the annihilation of millions of people. But he also committed those sins in following the path of dharma. And so is the case for us also on a smaller. Even if you follow the path of piety, we'll commit sins. And the famous example is given of food, right? That the allocated diet for us is vegetables, but even if we eat that, we still commit violence. We still kill plants. When we cook, the fire kills so many living entities. When we eat, the fire of digestion in our stomach kills so many entities. So there's violence that is committed, and the Vedas recommend prayashchit for this unavoidable sins, which is what Maharaj Yudhishthira did. He performed 3 Ashwamedha Yagyas, he undertook fasting, etc. For us, the prayashchit is subsumed within the process of of our devotion. So we try to minimize the sinful activities we do by virtue of following the four regulative principles, but then inadvertently sinful activities are performed, in our case also because of the age of Kali. But the way that we protect ourselves against the reactions to that is by performing a devotional service. So again, taking the example of food, we offer it to Krishna and then we eat it, which absolves us of all the sins that are concomitant with the process of cooking. And Prabhupada says that anytime you raise any money, inadvertently sins are committed. But by apportioning a part of it to the service of Krishna and his devotees, we purify that endeavor. Between a man and woman, there is lust, which basically is the cause of sins. But by aspiring to have children who are Krishna conscious, we purify that potential sin. So by dovetailing our activities to the process of bhakti, we don't do explicit prayashchit, but we purify ourselves by the mercy of Krishna.
Thank you, Prabhu.
Okay, thank you.
Hare Krishna, Prabhuji.
Hare Krishna, Prabhu.
Prabhuji, you gave the explanation on the difference between will of Krishna and the desire of Krishna. The explanation I could understand, but it looks like on a normal sense, desire, an intense desire is said to be will, but in probably Krishna's case, will and desire look synonymous, because he could just by his will, by his desire, everything will happen. He doesn't need to intensely think of to do something. So how a will can be a law of karma, where Krishna is completely neutral to them? Because if Krishna wills to kill them, it is like he is intensely desiring, or at least desiring. That will and desire, what is the distinction? Because desire is again given as a positive aspect, that he desires for devotees, his devotees' benefit, is not neutral. So can you please explain what is the difference between will and desire?
So I think you're getting too much caught on the semantics of the word will and desire. But the difference over here basically is Krishna is dealing with his devotees and others. So when Krishna deals with others, he deals in a neutral way. And that is basically, at least in this verse, considered to be the will of Krishna. And when Krishna is dealing with his devotees, then there is more. So there is a stronger emotional aspect of it. There is a stronger sense, like the verse says, that Krishna became pleased when he saw the kingdom of Mirage Yudhishthira. And Prabhupada says that how can Krishna become pleased when Krishna is never displeased? But then he says that he is pleased, but he's even more pleased when he sees his devotees are flourishing. So that is the more personal interaction between Krishna and his devotees. I won't worry too much on the specific semantics of will and desire, and
Yes, Prabhuji, I understood. Yeah.
Whether the will is the concentrated effect of desire. I mean, I disagree with that assumption, but I would not worry about it too much anyway.
Yes, Prabhu. Agreed, Prabhu. Basically, a point is Krishna is partial to his devotees and neutral to the non-devotees.
Okay, so we'll now continue. So the second part of the chapter is the prayers by the ladies of Hastinapur, and they will. So this is the segue to it. They'll start a little later, and they go until close to the end of the chapter, till the 30th verse. So we'll do 110.7. Usitva Hastinapure Mashan Katipayan Hari Surdam cha Vishakaya Spashuscha Priya Kamayaya Sri Hari, Lord Shri Krishna, resided at Hastinapur for a few months to pacify his relatives and please his own sister, Subhadra. So we can understand that when Maharaj Yudhishthira stopped Krishna from going to Dwarka, he stayed back for a few months. It doesn't say how many months, but for more than 1 month. So he says Katipayan Masan. Katipayan means Vishwanath Chakravarti Thakur translates it to as many months. Prabhupada translates to a few months, but basically months that are more than one. And he stayed back to pacify Vishokaya, to pacify the Suhurdam, his relatives, and especially, so of all the relatives, so the Goswami is calling our attention to Cha, he says, especially Priya Kamaya Swaswaha, especially his sister Subhadra. Swasuhu means sister. And the reason, the Prabhupada says, Subhadra was specially to be pacified because she lost her only son Abhimanyu, who was just married. The boy left his wife Uttara, mother of Maharaj Parikshit. The Lord is always pleased to satisfy his devotees in any capacity. Only his devotees can play the parts of his relatives. The Lord is absolute. So Prabhupada mentions in the purport, only his devotees can play the parts of his relatives. The Lord is absolute. So this is a very interesting statement, and I just want you to think a little bit about it and share that. Why do you think Prabhupada is making this statement?
Hare Krishna Prabhu here, Sarangadas. Because all the devotees has gone through so much trial and tribulation, and it's only devotees that can take up so much hardship.
Okay. Thank you, Prabhu.
One more thought, Prabhuji. Like, because in the translation it was mentioned, he is pacifying all of them, but especially his sister Subhadra. So it means to say that we should not think that just like we are very dear to our family members, Krishna is dear to his devotees. Subhadra being exalted devotee, she became his sister, because otherwise nobody is Krishna's brother, sister, father and all. So she is so much devoted, so she is pacifying her so much.
Okay, thank you.
Prabhuji, I was thinking like to teach us through his devotees. So like he will choose his devotees as his relatives, because they will be going through trials and tribulations, and if only devotees through the how they react to those trials and tribulations is how he will teach us.
Okay, good. Thank you. All good points.
In a way, I was thinking that perhaps she will also feel the separation of Krishna even more so, being a sister, and hence that little bit more of.
Yes, that is also relevant. So the point Prabhupada makes is that only the devotees of Krishna can become his relatives. So Prabhupada says that to disambiguate the notion that that Krishna plays favorites to his relatives, because that would be nepotism. That you're related to Krishna, so Krishna is favorable to you, and then then I think, or you think that, well, we don't have a relationship with Krishna. I'm not his sister or brother or nephew or niece, which means that Krishna will not favor me. But Prabhupada is explained that it works the other way around. That because you're a devotee, you become a relative of Krishna. The favoritism of Krishna is only for his devotees. The fact that they're relatives is incidental. Some devotees become relatives and Krishna favors them, but the real reason that he's favoring them is because they are his devotees. So Prabhupada says that to encourage us, that if we follow the path of bhakti, if we become devotees, we can expect Krishna's favoritism, even though we may not be related to Krishna. Okay, we'll do the next verse, 110.8. Amantra chabhya anugyataha pravishvasya abhivadyatam aruraratam kasichit pravishko abhivaditaha. Afterwards, when the Lord asked permission to depart and the king gave it, the Lord offered his respects to Maharaj Yudhishthira by bowing down at his feet, and the king embraced him. After this, the Lord, being embraced by others and receiving their obeisances, got into his chariot. So, fourth attempt of Krishna is finally successful. That now he again is asking for permission to leave, and the king gives it. And we see here Krishna relating to the different devotees in the corresponding mood. The Maharaj Yudhishthira is older to Krishna, so Krishna bows at his feet and Maharaj Yudhishthira embraces him in return. And those like Nakul and Sahadev who are younger to Krishna, Krishna received their obeisances. And those like Arjun who are peer of Krishna, Krishna embraced them. So, factually speaking, Prabhupada says that there are two reasons for Krishna to bow to Maharaj Yudhishthira. So the first reason is because Krishna is following the Bhaumi Leela. So his Prakrit pastimes is that Yudhishthira is elder to him, Krishna is younger. So he is respecting that material relationship, and he's giving obeisances. And this goes back to Krishna's statement in chapter 3, where he says that if I ever fail to engage in my duty carefully, others would follow and there will be ruination. So he's setting an example for others. The second, more intimate reason Prabhupada says is that Krishna actually is, so Prabhupada says, the Lord takes pleasure when some of his devotees accept him as less important in terms of love. No one is greater than or equal to the Lord, but he takes pleasure in being treated as younger than his devotees. These are the transcendental pastimes of the Lord. So Prabhupada, in the purport, he uses this term less important in terms of love, not in status. So this is the transcendental competition that happens between Krishna and his devotees. Krishna is trying to defeat his devotees by his love for them, and the devotees are trying to defeat Krishna by their love for him. So when the devotees are in this mood that their love for Krishna is stronger, then Krishna, he reciprocates by taking a position of less importance in terms of love. So when Yudhishthira is bowing before Maharaj Yudhishthira or touching the feet of Kunti Devi, it's not that they think that they have a superior status to Krishna, but they are acknowledging the fact that Krishna is reciprocating to their love. So based on this exchange, Srila Prabhupada in the purport makes the assertion that this proves that Krishna is a person, because only with a person you can have relationships, and only when there are relationships will there be this notion of superiority or inferiority, or so-called inferiority or sameness. The fact that Krishna is bowing before Maharaj Yudhishthira, that he's accepting obeisances of others, that he's exchanging, considering others to be his equal, even though nobody is superior to or equal to Krishna, indicates that Krishna as a person has these loving exchanges. Okay, then 110, 9 and 10. Subhadra Draupadi Kunti Virat Tanaya Tata Gandhari Dhartarashtascha Yutsar Gautama Yumau Vakrodarascha Dhaumyascha Sriya Matsya Sutadya Nasare Vimuyanta Viram Sharangadan Dhanavaha. At that time, Subhadra, Draupadi, Kunti, Uttara, Gandhari, Dhritarashtra, Yutsa, Kripacharya, Nakul, Sahadev, Bhimasen, Dhaumya, and Satyavati all nearly fainted because it was impossible for them to bear separation from Lord Krishna. So there are three things that kind of stand out when you read this verse about people who are almost fainting with this just thought that Krishna is going to be separated from them. One, there is the mention of Dhritarashtra. So Dhritarashtra, as we know, was the root cause of the battle. Krishna came and tried to reason with him so many times, and Dhritarashtra he simply did not listen to Krishna. But we see that even here he is fainting at the thought of separation from Krishna. And the point that is made in this context is that Krishna is all attractive, which means everybody is attracted to Krishna. The Asuras, the Rakshas, the Devas, everybody is attracted to Krishna. If everybody was not attracted to Krishna, then Krishna would not be called Krishna. Because his quality of being all attractive is spiritual. It's not predicated on the other person. So for people like you and I, maybe we are attractive to some people, maybe we are repulsive to other people. Why? Because the quality is predicated on the relationship, but not in case of Krishna. The only difference is that the response to that attraction manifests in different ways. So here Sutta is rightly mentioning that Dhritarashtra also is fainting, because even he is lamenting the notion of separation from Krishna. So this points to the all attractiveness of Krishna. There are two people whose names are not mentioned in this verse, which are omitted in this verse, whom you would expect to also be experiencing separation from Krishna. And they are Yudhishthir and Arjun. And the reason is, and this is not really a tattva, but it's just one of those things, that Yudhishthir and Arjun are mentioned elsewhere in the chapter, and their feelings with respect to Krishna is described. I'm sorry, I wanted to share also an analogy of Krishna's all attractiveness. So the analogy that is given is that of a beautiful woman, and everybody is attracted to a beautiful woman. A man may be inspired by love. A child may look upon the woman as a mother. A lusty man may look upon her with passion. Woman might look upon her with envy. Other women may look upon her with appreciation. But all are attracted to her. So the same example is used in the context of the all attractiveness of Krishna. That everybody is attracted to Krishna, but that attraction may manifest in different ways. I'm sorry I missed this analogy, but I thought it was nice in explaining this feature of why Dhritarashtra is also mentioned here. So back to Yudhishthir and Arjun. So Yudhishthira is mentioned in the previous verse as accepting obeisance of Krishna, specifically by name. And Arjun is mentioned later on in the chapter, in the 17th verse, as carrying the umbrella for Krishna. So the personalities that are mentioned in this verse are not mentioned elsewhere in the chapter by name. And the personalities that are mentioned elsewhere in the chapter by name are not mentioned over here. So like I said, it is not, I don't think it's a tattva, but it's just something that is a point of interest. So in the verse, Sutta Goswami says, Matsya Sutadaya, the descendant of the Matsya dynasty. And it could be translated to both Uttara as well as to Satyavati, because Uttara was the daughter of the king of Virat, who was a descendant of the Matsya dynasty, and Satyavati was also directly a daughter of a Matsya or a fish. Uttara is also mentioned specifically as Virat Tanaya, as the daughter of Virat. And Vishwanath Chakravarti Thakur, he kind of mentions the fact that it's possible that Sutta Goswami mentions the name Uttara twice. The first time when he mentions Uttara, then he becomes distracted by thinking of the pastime of he becomes distracted about thinking about the pastime of Krishna saving Parishit Maharaj in the womb of Uttara, and so he repeats the name Uttara again. Prabhupada mentions, translates it as Satyavati. And a little bit of discrepancy over here, because in the Mahabharata, it is mentioned that Satyavati died before the battle of Mahabharata was fought. That when Maharaj Pandu gave up his life in the forest, then at that point Satyavati developed a lot of detachment. And then she went along with her two daughter-in-laws, Ambika and Ambalika, to the forest. And as the process was, through the process of austerities, she gave up her life before the battle was started. So again, this is one of the areas where the Bhagavatam is in details, slight difference with the Mahabharata. Then other personalities mentioned here is Yuyutsu. So Yuyutsu is the son of Thrush, the 101st son, so to speak, because he was not born from Gandhari, but he was born by the union of Thrush with a Vaishya maid by the name of Sugad of Gandhari. So when Gandhari's pregnancy was for very long, more than 2 years, so then Dhritarashtra got worried that Pandu may have a son before him, which would make him the king. So that is why he had a son through the maid, who was named Yudsu. But as things happened, the son was also born after Mirage, Yudhishthir was born. So Yudsu is also mentioned as Yudsu was also one of the 5 persons who, even though was a brother of Duryodhan, he actually fought on the side of the Pandavas because of his conscience. And it's mentioned that at the beginning of the battle, Yudhishthira asked for anybody to defect. And this was, I guess, accepted practice at the time. Both the kings would ask the members of the opposing armies to change sides at the time before the war began. And at that time, Yudhishthira, he defected. He is one of the only sons of Yudhishthira who survived. Not one of he's the only son of Yudhishthira, of Maharaj Dhritarashtra, who survived. Okay. So the next verse So the next verse is a little long verse. Given the fact that we have only 10 minutes, I think I'll stop over here and see if there's any questions or comments. Next discussion, we will do the prayers by the ladies of Hastinapur. Okay, so I'll stop here. Any questions, comments?
Hare Krishna, Prabhu. So the point about Krishna being all attractive, I guess, at least my attraction for the holy name is very wavering. Sometimes there is, but many times, it's just matter of duty. Could you talk a bit about it?
So philosophically, if we keep aside our attraction for Krishna's holy name, the point that was made that Krishna is all attractive means that everybody is attracted to some aspect of Krishna. So being in a conditioned stage, we are attracted to the external energy of Krishna. So we have attraction to Krishna, but it is just to a different form of Krishna. So that famous description of Krishna entering the arena of the battle of Kamsa, and everybody is attracted to Krishna. Some in Vatsalya, some in Madhurya, some in Shanta, and Kamsa actually saw Krishna as death personified. The warriors saw him as a formidable opponent, but all of them were attracted to Krishna. So that was the point. From a practical perspective, Mataji, you were making this point that all are, not just yours, but it's true for all of us, that if Krishna is all attractive, then why isn't our attraction for Krishna's name all encompassing? That is because our attraction is divided between Krishna's different energies. So sometimes it goes to Krishna's external energy. We get attracted by material things. Sometimes it goes to Krishna's marginal energy. We get attracted to other living beings, to other entities, our family, our friends. And once in a while, by mercy of Krishna and Guru and other devotees, it gets diverted to Krishna's internal energy, and then it gets directed to Krishna's name and form and pastimes. Does that help, Mataji?
Sure, Prabhu, but I'm just, I'm just thinking like a devil's advocate. It seems like a matter of convenience to say that we are attracted to his external energy. Well, it is the truth that he is all encompassing and there's nothing, like Prabhupada says, there are only two things, there is Krishna and Krishna. So, yeah, I mean, while it is true, I'm also thinking it's just a convenient way of thinking about it, I guess. I'm not sure how to put that in a mild way. I'm sorry.
So the reason it is convenient is because it is factual. We are. I see where you're coming from. Like, if the philosophical tattva is that Krishna is all attractive, then we should be always attracted to Krishna's name and his deity, etc., etc. But we are not. So does that deny the fact that Krishna is all attractive? And the point I'm making is not, because we're attracted to other forms of Krishna. It's it's a facile explanation in the sense that it is factual and easily understandable. And I guess that's why you're considering it to be convenient.
I mean, when you were talking about the example of Krishna entering the arena, wrestling arena, it's a great example because I was thinking, in a way, we cannot ignore him. I guess it's like, two sides of the same coin, that the aspect of love and hate is, and maybe taking it to a spiritual level, it's, I guess it's just matter of time before I can take it in. Thank you.
Okay. Thank you, Mataji. Any other thoughts?
I agreed with the point that Mataji shared, that we cannot ignore him. Just if someone else enter the arena, like nobody cares. But it is impossible for not caring that Krishna's presence.
That is true.
And also the example that you gave of how different personalities are attracted to a woman in different ways. Some as mother, some as something. So even envy, other women envy. So similarly, Shishpal and we are all.
Thank you.
Hare Krishna Prabhu, this is Paramatma again. I just like to clarify one point that was sent in a correspondence earlier this week about our submitting of the answers to the questions. And I just saw in the correspondence that we had for the last 10 chapters. So I'm just wondering, how should we submit them, chapter by chapter, or just the current chapter and then the previous one later? What are your thoughts on that?
It's probably most convenient to submit them chapter by chapter, just because we have a backlog. It'll take us a while to do all the 10 chapters. So submitting them chapter by chapter will help us break up the effort, and also I think it'll give a sense that that your attempts are on the right track, as opposed to going all the way into the 10th chapter and realizing that maybe this is the best way to answer this question, or this is an adequate length, etc. It's good idea to submit a chapter and then wait for the response and submit the next chapter.
Just further clarification, I was just thinking also that just like I did the answer for chapter 10, and it was very, very useful for me, in just participating in the class. I mean, you answer, for the current chapter. So I was thinking that we do the current chapter, just let's say chapter 10, then we do, when we go over to chapter 11, we answer chapter 11, and then one by one we can do the back chapters and send that up. I don't know what you think. In fact, I have finished everything already. I finished from 1 to 10. I have the answers for everything. But I'm just thinking about you. If it would be too much of an overload for you to just to take everything in at the same time, and like that.
I don't think so. I mean, frankly speaking, I don't expect a lot of the participants to send in the answers. So I don't think I'm going to be inundated by a lot of answers. If you have completed everything, please go ahead and send it, and I'll be more than happy to take a look at it. I also very much appreciate your suggestion, and I guess this is a point for Achyuta, to send the questions ahead of the chapter, because in answering that, you automatically get insight into the chapter.
The entire chapter, and you can mostly be you can be in touch with the subject matter.
Yes.
Because you have to study each one of the purports to answer those questions.
Correct. And that's the way the questions have been designed, that they kind of help you distill. And the way the questions have been written is that they try to bring out the points that are brought out in the lectures subsequently. So yes, and I think I heard Achyuta say in the last discussion that she will be sending the questions ahead of the beginning of the chapter, right?
Yeah, we have a minute more. I'd just like to make there's something practical with myself also, and that is that because I have a lot of GBC responsibility, and I have to be traveling from time to time. Just like last weekend, I was in Ecuador. I'm on the Latin RGB and whatever. I'm also making arrangement for Romapad Swami to travel in some of these countries also. So I'm making this point because, like, on some sessions I might not be there, and I saw on the correspondence also that attendance is also very important. So it will not be very often, just like once in a while I might miss one or two classes. So
I don't think that should be a problem. I mean, for one, we're not taking attendance, and I guess the second aspect is that, and I'm assuming that you're working towards the Bhakti Vaibhav certification. So this Bhakti Vaibhav certification is actually issued by Bhayahari Prabhu from ISKCON of DC. This is not the VIHE certification, which has other requirements also, part of which are face-to-face discussions and preaching, etc., which all cannot be met. So, so notionally speaking, yes, attendance is important, but I would not worry too much about missing a few classes. Just from the sake of completeness, I would recommend that the classes that you miss, if you can still go ahead and listen to the recordings, that will give you a sense of continuity.
no, I always do that. I always listen to the recording, and it's even when I'm traveling. Sometimes you don't have internet. Sometimes, well, I had to say that I had a good opportunity because I heard you mention that we should sometimes be giving classes also. I mean, just using all the material and notes that we have been getting from you. I thought it was very, very useful for me because while I was there every day, morning, evening, I was giving classes, and although it was Spanish, it was like, yeah, I had a translator, so it was good that I was able to apply, a lot of the the notes that I took from you, and it turned out to be very well.
Great, thank you, Prabhu.
Hare Krishna, Prabhu. This is Gaur Sundar Das. Please accept my humble obeisances.
Hare Krishna, Prabhu.
I missed the last few classes because I was traveling and there was lack of internet and all that. I just heard from Paramatma Prabhu right now that there was a questions for chapters being sent, and so I think I didn't get that email. If those who are responsible can resend that email, that'll be helpful for me.
Yep.
I sent it out to the group, Prabhuji, last week.
Yeah, I have to. I
link
didn't get it from the Krishna talks, but if it is from Achyuta or Prem Kishore Prabhu, probably I missed. I'm still to catch up through my emails, but if you can resend it, that'll be really helpful.
I'll also will send the links, Prabhu. Don't worry. With this recording, today's recording, we'll send the links.
Okay, thank you so much. Hare Krishna.
Hare Krishna, this is Namapriya. I also have one request. Thank you so much because with me, Arizona time, as I said, after office, it's not always timely that I can get on the call. So I really appreciate Prem Kishore Prabhu sending everything. And if it's possible, I don't know how much of a time and effort if it takes, but at least by next day, if it is that I always usually catch up by the next day. So I would appreciate that. Thank you.
Thank you, Mother.
And one more request regarding the emails for the classes. If can be sent one day in advance, that will be really helpful for me, because last couple of weeks I was expecting it, I think on Wednesday, but it was sometimes on Thursday, and I missed those classes. So if it can be sent one day in advance, more than 24 hours, then I can follow up and I can try to attend the classes. Thank you.
So I think for you, Prabhu, that would translate, this is just for, I guess, Prem Kishore Prabhu's consideration. Because you're in India, I think for you it translates to be almost like 2 days in advance, right?
Yes, Prabhu. So if the class is 8 p.m. Wednesday, if the email can be sent 8 p.m. Tuesday, before that, 7 p.m. Tuesday Eastern time. then that'll be helpful for me.
Actually, one time we had Thursday class, Prabhu. That day also we did, soon after the class we sent it. But we got it. Usually
Yeah,
what we
thank
do,
you.
the recording takes 2 to 3 hours to store. So the next day morning I'll be doing it here. So if it is delayed a bit, possibly 1 or 2 times, but we'll ensure that by morning tomorrow you'll get it.
Yeah, thank you, Prabhu.
Okay, thank you very much. So we look forward to being with you on Wednesday. Vancha kalpatarubhayasya kripa sindhubhya eva cha patitanam pavanebhyo vaishnavebhyo namo namah. Anant Koti Vaishnav Vrind ki jai, Srila Prabhupada ki jai, Nitai Gaur Premanande. Hari
Good.
Hare
Thank you,
Krishna.
Prabhu.